Some books are classics. They will be read for hundreds of years. Some books are flashes in the pan. They are wildly popular for a short time and then fade into obscurity. And some books are duds. They don't go anywhere, and hardly anyone ever reads them. But I have some of these books on my shelves. Hello, welcome to my channel. Another bibliophile reads. Today, I want to talk about some obscure books that few people are currently reading. This started from a conversation in my live stream show. We were talking about candidates for the great American novel, and Appointment in Samara by John O'Hara came up as maybe not the great American novel, but a very important American novel. John O'Hara was once one of America's most popular authors. He has faded a bit from that popularity. He was even, if I'm not mistaken, a strong candidate for the Nobel Prize in Literature at one point in his career. But when we were talking about Appointment in Samara, I remembered that I purchased this book by him. This book is from the Terrace, originally published in 1958. This is, again, if I am not mistaken, what John O'Hara considered his wedge into winning that Nobel Prize for Literature. He did not win, and not many people read this book anymore. Now, one of the reasons people may not read this book anymore is that it is a mammoth. In this edition, it is 981 pages long, and of course, the print is teeny tiny. But I did buy this at a used bookstore. It was one of those used bookstores where you get books at half cover price, and this one was $1.75, but the owner of the store says there's a $1 minimum on books. So I paid $1 for this. It's got this wonderfully cheesy, tacky, 70-ish cover, and I got it. I still want to read it. I don't know why. So I looked it up on Goodreads, even though I'm not a fan of Goodreads, and I have discovered that it had 438 ratings, it had 38 reviews, and that's about it. Not so popular. I mean, not horrible, but not a popular book. But is it any good? Should I try to read this? Just out of grins and giggles, I'm looking at the first sentence. There are alive today hundreds of men who saw Samuel Eaton, who accepted wages from him, envied him, hated him, laughed at him behind his back, worked hard for him, cheated him, and never addressed him except as Mr. L. Eaton or Mr. Samuel. It does have me a little bit intrigued by what was once America's #1 storyteller. So this got me down a little bit of a rabbit hole, looking for some obscure, unread books on my bookshelves. And I have 5 more books that are really not read very much anymore. Xorandor by Christine Brooke-Rose, a science fiction novel published in 1986. Brooke-Rose was originally from Switzerland. She immigrated to England, and she worked at Bletchley Park during World War II. How fascinating. I did a little bit of research, and I guess there was some scandal. She was a married woman while working at Bletchley Park, having an affair with a married man. She is mostly known for her experimental novels, and this is one of the novels late in her life. As I said, it is a science fiction novel about an intelligent asteroid. I looked it up on Goodreads and discovered that it has 78 ratings and 18 reviews. I'm not sure what inspired me to buy this book. Somewhere at some time, I read a review or saw a video that made me seek out this book, and I bought it off Thrift Books for like $8. Let's look at the first sentence. The first time we came across Xorandor, we were sitting on him. Should I read this? It does not look like many people read this book anymore. The Berlin Connection by Johannes Mario Simmel, originally published in 1961 and translated into English in 1970. I have never heard of this author before. Of course, he is Austrian, so he's probably more pronounced in Austria and Germany, but it says on the cover over 2 million copies in print. So it looks like at one time he was a popular author that has fallen from favor, at least in the United States. I checked up its status on Goodreads and discovered that it had 71 ratings and 4 reviews. Not a lot of people reading this book nowadays. And again, let's go ahead and give this the first sentence test. I can remember the moment, even now, when I died for the first time. That's actually kind of intriguing. This is, if I am not mistaken, a World War II thriller, but I'm guessing it's coming from the German point of view. I picked this up at a used bookstore, just browsing around, and I wanted to buy something from the store, and this caught my eyes. Should I read it, or is it going to remain forever unread? The Age of Longing by Arthur Koestler, originally published in 1951. Most people who are dedicated readers probably will recognize this author's name. He wrote Darkness at Noon, that very famous anti-authoritarian novel. And it is a darn good book, too. I'm very tempted to reread Darkness at Noon because it is about resisting authority when you are in prison. Sometime along the way, this book was mentioned. I think it was in the comments on the library thing, but they mentioned that this book, The Age of Longing, was actually pretty darn good. And with that author's reputation, I bought this. Now, it's been a number of years. It's sitting on my shelf. It is supposedly about leftists in Paris after World War II. That really sounds like my sort of thing. When you open to the first page, it says freedom or slavery. I guess it's dealing with issues of authoritarianism again. Probably a subject that we all should be reading a lot about now. Let's go ahead and give it the first sentence test. The colonel had drunk so much wine that when he heard the swish of the rocket, he almost took cover behind the parapet of the balcony. Should I read this? Or should I read or reread Darkness at Noon? This only has 10 reviews on Goodreads. Should I read this, or should I reread Darkness at Noon? This book only has 67 ratings on Goodreads and 10 reviews. Mortal Gods by Jonathan Fast, originally published in 1978. It is a science fiction novel. Jonathan Fast was originally married to Erica Young, author of Fear of Flying, that famous sort of erotic novel. And he's also the son of Howard Fast. Howard Fast was once one of America's most popular authors who has fallen a little bit to the wayside nowadays. And this Howard and Jonathan Fast has written some other books, but if you look this one up on Goodreads, it has 33 ratings and 9 reviews. We'll do the first sentence test. Nick Harmon ascended post 14 to Morgan Grimm's office, wondering if this time he was going to be fired. Should I read this or let it sit on my shelf and pick up one of his father's novels? Jailbait by William Bernard, originally published in 1949. I tried looking up this author and got no information. I am willing to bet a box of donuts that William Bernard is a pen name. Now, look at this cover and the headline. Teenage hoodlums on the loose. And the back. I'm only reading the back cover of this one. Shocking but true. Here at last is the real story of teenage sin the headlines have never dared reveal. Of a 12-year-old call girls entertaining 4 men each night. Of sexual misconduct raging like a plague in schools from Maine to California. Of secret orgies between teenage girls and men in their 40s. And here is the startling truth about what goes on behind the walls of our reformatories after dark. And a comment from the Cleveland Plain Dealer. If anyone doubts the seriousness of America's delinquency problem, Jailbait will quickly dispel the notion. I am willing to bet that there is very little truth behind this supposedly non-fiction account. When I looked it up on Goodreads, it had 3 ratings and 0 reviews. Just how bad can this book be? Let's give this the first sentence test. While the cops were pulling her out of the prowl car, kicking and screaming like a hurt animal, 14-year-old Nanette tore her stockings. I am willing to believe that almost nobody, and I mean nobody, is reading this book anymore. If I read it, I might be the first person to read it in a decade. Or maybe not. Maybe people, or should I say men, too embarrassed to admit that they read a book called Jailbait. Should I read it, or should it go back on my shelves, unread, for many, many years? Well, those are some of my obscure titles on my shelves that I believe few people are reading nowadays. What do you think of these books? Are you tempted to read any of these books? Do you have obscure titles on your shelf that few people are reading? I think inquiring minds want to know. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on reading.